All right, guess we're live. Sorry for the delay. I had to clean up the kitty litter. Um, well, my hair, my capillary treasure. This is how I call it. My hair. Right. So a lot of people keep asking me, like, I don't get it. Like, is your culture really that weird or different? Well, not necessarily weird. It's like, is your culture really that different than mine? Because I said that I got engaged last year, and then people are like, when are you getting married? When are you getting married? Like, usually here, traditionally, after you get engaged, it's 1 year until you're getting married, and I'm getting married on the 28th this month. So, like, it's kind of weird that people keep asking, like, when is the wedding? When is the wedding? When is the wedding? So, yeah, it's this month on the 28th, and I don't cut my hair because I'm waiting for it to be closer to the event. I'll probably wait 1 or 2 more weeks and then I'll cut it. So, man, knowing is half the battle. I got a brony in the chat, a brony artiste, and I also have Abdi Muhammad. And Abdi Muhammad, do you speak Swedish? Because all the Muslims that I knew from Romania, they were speaking Romanian. Yeah, I mean the Romanian custom, I guess, is like you get engaged and then you still live with the person, but it's kind of weird because, to be honest, like I really don't feel like I'm getting married because I've been living with her for all this time, and it feels like we're already married. If you know what I mean, like it feels kind of weird. I would have married her faster, to be honest, but it was like with the COVID restrictions and with all the restaurants being shut down, so there was no way for me to do the arrangement sooner because I had to also save a couple of dollars. And like we initially said, it's like, all right, let's do it like just a small dinner table, just like a family gathering thing. And then I found out that like her family is freaking huge, and it's going to be like 35 people coming, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. The wedding, Sarah, is on the 28th. Nice avatar, by the way. Did you change it? I think Sarah changed her avatar. Oh, he came to Sweden very young. That's actually interesting. Like, I always wonder, like, if I were to have a kid, let's say... Yeah, I think like, if I were to move into England, I would force my wife to speak English only in the household. Mostly to help, like, master the tongue, as they say. And if I would have a kid, I would probably teach him English. It would be the same if I were to move into Germany. Like, we would have a rule. It's like, let's only speak German in the household. And I would teach my kid German. I would probably not teach him Romanian at all. It's kind of funny because, like, I got this neighbor who came from Australia. And, well, I guess more likely fled from Australia. Like, no, seriously, can you imagine, like, someone fleeing Australia? Like, did you ever thought you'd hear that in 2021? A person fleeing Australia and returning to Romania, right? So they did that. And it's kind of funny because their kid is kind of young and he speaks Romanian with an English accent. It's quite cute. But I never thought that I would experience that, like someone fleeing from Australia. It's kind of cool. Anyway, what is my secret? Is it the squeaky voice? Speaking of the squeaky voice, maybe I should start smoking. Why not teach all? I mean, you can teach all, obviously, but it's going to be very confusing for a kid to learn two languages. I mean, I guess you can teach him the second when he's like 6, but like the first language you want to teach him is the language of the country they live in, right? So that they can integrate and they can have an easier time talking with the locals. Like they're going to meet a lot of locals, so they need to speak the language. Whether you're in Germany, whether you're in Sweden or in England, like obviously teaching them the local language is the most important. Teach kids languages, they learn it faster and easier. Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought myself English, if I'm thinking about, like, I really I really despise learning English at school. Because at school, all they did was to teach us grammar, like if clause and the past tense and blah, blah, blah. And I always thought that to be just like grammar, you kind of master it as you go. And I was thinking that to be like a chore instead of like reading English literature and telling us about like English culture and whatnot. Like we only focused on grammar, and I despise that. So I learned English by myself, really. I mean, there was a point where I knew English grammar perfectly, but I didn't know how to speak English, if you can believe that, right? So I knew how to read the words. I knew how to make the if clause and like the put something in past tense and whatnot. But I really didn't know like what some of the words meant. And it's only when I taught myself by watching Cartoon Network and by spending time on IRC, getting groomed by furries, that I actually managed to learn English. Uh, Teach him Romanian first. It's good to have the diaspora ethic. No, that would be painful. I mean, imagine, you teach him. Let's say you're in India and you're teaching him Romanian, and then he goes up with all the Indian kids, and they well, all the Hindi kids, I guess, and they don't understand each other like that. That would be cruel. Grammar is very, very important. Yeah, but I think like understanding what you're saying is more important than grammar. And as I mentioned, like after a while, you kind of start to understand just like how the correct pronunciation should be. Like if you kind of get that you're not using grammar properly and it just sounds wrong. Yeah, grammar learning is the slowest way of learning language. I agree, and I despised it because that was what we were taught at school. Holy crap, 49.99. Shekels for the wedding fund. Hate to sound like a broken record, but have you had the chance to look at Mina Sandenberg's work? You know what? Fuck it. I'll look at Mina Sandenberg right now. Let's see. Mina Sundenberg. So, Swedish-speaking Finnish illustrator cartoonist born in Sweden. You know what this reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of that game. Damn, I forgot the name. It was like this type of Norse game. It was a turn-based kind of strategy resource management game. Man, I don't know if it's called Ragnar. Oh, Bannerlords. Bannerlords. It kind of reminds me of that. It's not exactly like that, but like the environment to me looks like that. But it's very good. Like she's obviously very talented. It's amazing work. I really like the faces of the characters. Like this is what the West needs in its cartoons: originality. Because you get like Cal Arts and you get Cal Arts lookalikes, and then you have like the I guess like the DC Comics things where they draw Superman, and that's it in terms of animation, right? So you have like that, and then you have like the anime, which has its own art style, but you don't really get like this type of art style, which is very unique, and this is what you have when you allow for creativity. Because I remember when I was growing up, almost every single cartoon looked different. Like the Flintstones, they look very different than I guess like Tom and Jerry look very different than the Tomcats. There were similarities, of course, but mostly like if you watch different cartoons, like for example, Asterix and Obelix look completely different than what the British were making. Anyway, right? Let's talk about the toxic male feminist culture at Blizzard. Thank you, Lamented Guide. I forgot to thank you for the donation. So, like the Washington Post, right, writes about this, and I love it. Like every voice matters. What they really mean to say is that this is a scientific way to say cherry picked. Well, it's not even cherry picked. I guess it's like what random allegory. Yeah, like something like that, and be taken seriously. Right, like a cherry picked event. Like this is what I noticed, right? Like if you talk with someone like Vosh, for example, and you will say, "Well, I noticed X, Y, and Z," and he will say, "Well, those are cherry picked events," or that's just your personal interpretation. Like your, but like what the left does is like they say lived experiences, right? So they will say lived experiences, and that somehow validates it. Like that somehow makes it correct. Right? They don't wait for the court opinion. They don't use innocent until proven guilty. Why is there smudge on the webcam? Give me a second. Let me fix the smudge. Do I even have anything to fix the smudge? Much better. It's still a little bit blurry. I don't know. I'll focus it after the stream. So, Church Scarlet remembered the times women at Blizzard would meet in empty office room in the company HQ. There they would commiserate over their experiences, sometimes to process raw emotions before heading back to work. In one such meeting about 5 years ago, Scarlett, a former engineer at Blizzard, decided to share her experiences of being inappropriately touched often by coworkers. Well, you know, like how I would fix this? But I don't think like they would like my solution. Have offices for women and offices for men. But if you do that, they will freak out, of course. I would just be able to say, look, we don't have like the company dollar to supervise kids, to supervise employees like it's a kindergarten. So there's like two things they can do. Number one, put video cameras and like spy on employees 24/7. And if something happens, it's like, all right, let's look at the recording. Let's see what happened. If not, just have like separate departments, one for men and one for women. Problem solved. But they don't want to solve the problem, right? Like they enjoy this situation. It's like you get to see it time and time again in various companies. Like you get to see it at Hollywood. You get to see it at Blizzard. I'm pretty sure it happens in high schools as well, but you know, it's a little bit different there. So like either you have like office, different departments, but if you don't want that, then have like webcams everywhere and a strict office code. No touching, no socializing, no blah, blah, blah. Like here's the interesting thing, right? What is the difference between office harassment and flirting? And the difference is it's when the woman likes it, right? So if you are at the office and you make, I don't know, like let's say you break up some humor in order to see if she likes you or not. So you go on and you do like a sexual innuendo. If she likes you, then it's fine. If not, it's sexual harassment. So like pretty much like if you were to say that, like this is what I find the most interesting. If you were to go to CNN and you would say, okay, let's have it so at the office, men and women don't say anything sexual to each other. Don't say, don't touch each other. Don't look at each other inappropriately. Like as just minimal interaction. You know, like just act like you're in a church. If you do that, they will say, well, come on, that's really strict. You know, we're not advocating for that. Blah 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 blah. But then you see lawsuits where it's like a man made a joke or a man, like literally if you went to Twitch and you looked at some of the accusations that went against other live streamers, it's like the Coffeegate argument. It's like, yeah, I was in an elevator and this man asked me for coffee. So in a way, they do want you to behave as if you're in a church. But they don't want you to consider to make rules so that people behave like in a church, if you know what I mean. Like they want the grounds where these things can happen so that when they happen, they stage all these walkouts and they demand for people to resign and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, right? Like it's also interesting that the HR department isn't the one being accused. I mean, hey, you wanted to have diversity in the company, so apparently the leadership, like the people in charge, could molest women. Why don't they resign? I mean, are you telling me that the HR department, which is mostly women in most companies, like it's overwhelmingly represented by women, so the HR department didn't know what women are facing in the company? And if the answer is yes, how could they live with themselves by advocating for more women to be brought into this situation? So yeah, like this is something, and also Jordan Peterson is saying that, you know, the way men and women flirt is different. So men flirt by action, right? They go over there and they try to spark a conversation. They make a joke with a sexual innuendo or something like that. Like so men, they actively have to pursue. It's how human courtmanship works. Women, they flirt passively, right? So they use makeup, they use lipstick, they dress provocatively. That's how they flirt, in the hopes that the guy they like will come over to them and have a conversation. And if that's the case, right, if you want no flirting at the office, then have dress codes, right? Why are women wearing makeup at the office? That's what Jordan Peterson is saying. And the answer is like people are getting offended by the question. But like, okay, shouldn't you go to work in order to work, Like, are you going to work to flirt with people, or are you going to work in order to do your job? And if you go to work to do your job, then okay, well, have uniforms, men and women, like very prudish uniforms for both sexes, so that we don't discriminate. And no, like, act like you're in a church. You know, you're only allowed to have a conversation with another person if it's business related. So nothing regarding your personal life, nothing sexual whatsoever, zero tolerance policy, and there you go. Like, if I were in charge, I guarantee to you, you will not have any more sexual harassment. It would be a very insufferable company with a very insufferable corporate culture, but you will not get harassment at all. Like, there will be absolutely no more lawsuits. And it's kind of funny because it's probably the left that isn't going to like it. Like, I would fix the problem, but they wouldn't like the way that I'm fixing it. Mickey Mouse is not banned in Romania. Haha. Show this to the chat. Man, I will show it to the chat if it's got to do with what we're talking about. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the difference between the scientific method and science worshiper method. I will show it in a different live stream, because right now we're talking about the corporate culture at Blizzard. I'm sorry, I just don't like just jumping from one topic to another like this. Yeah, when you are young, you are at work to flirt. So there was this study which actually showed that in the past, there were 75% more relationship, like people would get married by meeting each other at work. But now the number has dropped dramatically, and it's probably that a lot of people are afraid to socialize while at work because of this, right? Like, you don't know, and usually feminists will say, well, you know, like, you should know what is and isn't harassment. And it's like, well, you know, it kind of depends. I mean, imagine if a woman would ask a guy if they want to take the relationship to a more serious level, and that could be considered harassment, right? If the guy doesn't want to. I'm pretty sure I can find a better allegory. But yeah. So anyway. A lot of women at Blizzard, we talked about this stuff happening. We would have therapy sessions with each other about it. None of us felt safe to report it, and felt there were so many instances where if we told someone outside of the group of friends that was having similar experience, we got told by coworkers that it was not a big deal. So, you know, like, this is the argument that I don't get, right? You're saying that you are afraid to talk about it because how people would react, and the moment you talked about it, you have the president of the company stepping down. You have every single journal and publication backing you up and taking your side. You have massive support from all over the gaming community. You have your male colleagues doing walkouts on Blizzard. So what the fuck are you talking about that you were afraid? I mean, unless you were paranoid, or I suppose, like, let's do this, like, these people live in California. Like, who told them that speaking out against sexual harassment is a bad idea? Because obviously it's not. I mean, you see what happens when they actually do speak out. Like, literally everyone under the sun is taking their side. And not only that, like, the company boss is stepping down. Like, when you write it like this, when you say, oh, we were afraid, don't you think like you're setting a bad example for other people? You shouldn't be afraid, right? If you have a problem, and especially if, like, more people are having the problem, like you're saying, oh, you had therapy session. So if you have like 4 or 5 people that are having the problem, you can team up, and in today's culture, you're going to get people to investigate the problem that you're experiencing. I really don't believe that this is like, oh, well, you know, we were afraid to talk about it and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's on you. You shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. Like, you're not in the 60s anymore. You don't live in a Sharia culture. You're in California. Scarlett said that during her years at Blizzard, she had been underpaid, harassed, and on 2 separate occasions groped at company events. She was later among a group. Okay, being underpaid is your opinion. All right, and this has to do with how you negotiate the salary. This is something that most people don't know, and this is actually something that the press should educate people about. Like, if you're opening the conversation about being underpaid, why don't you explain what it is? It's about negotiating your salary, and what this means, when you go to a job interview, the person at HR, or the manager, depending on the company, they usually will have like a bracket for how much they will pay the person. So let's say I'm hiring a person for Blizzard, and the wage for a senior developer, I don't know how much, but let's say you're going to be allowed to have somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000. And they might even say like 7,000 if it's a very skilled person. So if it's someone coming from a different gaming company with a lot of experience, you can pay them 7,000. So that's pretty much how the person that you're doing the interview with thinks about you. So when they ask you like how much do you want for this job, if you say 3,000, they will give you 3,000, right? Like what they want to do, like the purpose of the interviewer is to pay you as little as possible and make sure that you are talented enough for the position. So like what they want is talent that they can pay as small as possible. And the problem with this is like, let's say you said 3,000. When you're going to get a raise, it's not going to be a significant raise. Like what the company might do is like give you $100 extra every year, sometimes maybe more based on inflation. But it's like that time when you actually go and you negotiate the first salary is the most important thing. So when you go in there, if you were to say 6,000, you're going to be paid double than someone else that is exactly in the same position as you. Like I actually spoke with people who work in corporate, and they will say it's like, I found out that I'm earning twice as much than my colleagues. And this is why it's actually discouraged by corporate culture, by management, to talk about your wages in a company, because they don't want people to know this, right? So the best way to get a promotion is to find another job. So like let's say you get in and you work at Blizzard for 5,000, right? Then you can look for, like, once you get the experience, when you're looking for another job, well, now you have the luxury, because you already have like a job at Blizzard, you have the luxury to say, yeah, I want to work for 7,000 or I want to work for 10,000, right? And you'll be surprised that sometimes they will say yes, and you just manage to get like a huge promotion. And it's all about negotiating your salary, but it's also about taking the risk. So taking the risk is like, a lot of people don't want to do this, right? So if you're not a risk adverse person, because like what can happen is like, okay, you're looking for another job, and let's say they will hire you for double the pay, but then you go there and you don't like the team, or maybe like they don't like you and they don't think you're fit for the company, and you can end up getting fired. So you lose everything. So you need a person that likes taking risks, and it's not really about the work that you do. This is another thing that a lot of people don't notice. Working hard at a company doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get promoted, especially in this day and age. Like if you have, let's say, a really good person that knows how to draw, right? So you have a really good artist, and he draws amazing work, and he always manages to draw it on time, and he always manages to do everything right. You're not going to promote that person to a managerial position. Why? Because if you promote them to a managerial position, they probably start drawing, because now they have to do other things. They have to manage people, right? So you took him from a place in the company that was productive, which was him drawing and doing all this thing on time, and you put him in a managerial position, and now he doesn't draw. Now he's got to, babysit people. So most of the time in companies, it's going to be the mediocre person that becomes the boss. I personally don't agree with this. Because you're setting bad examples. Like the correct example should be, hey, if you work hard, you might get a promotion, and then more people get incentivized to work hard. Even though I kind of see the argument that they're saying that it's like, well, you don't want that person to be distracted and blah, blah, blah. But it is what it is. I just got there and V's talking about Igor. I think the reason they are afraid is similar to the little girls who lied during the Salem witch trials, because they would be found out and the same punishment applied. I didn't know that. Salaries are now determined by gender, race, and sexuality, nor merit or experience. So the problem with wokeness is that you have way too many skilled laborers. And I spoke with a person that is doing hirings, and he told me that at his company, he might have like one position and 250 people applying. So imagine this, like you have like one job and there's 250 people applying. Like there's going to be so many skilled people there. Like the main problem is like how do you even go through all of the resumes and give everyone a fair shake? Like you can't, right? It's like the number is way too big. So what you're going to do is like when you use wokeness, it sets like some guidelines for you. It's like, okay, well, if we can get like the woman that's also a minority and that's also a vegan and blah blah blah, and she fits all the check boxes, all of a sudden from 250 people you only have like 6 or 7 applicants, right? So that's one of the ways they can do it. Like they use this wokeness as kind of a filter to simplify their job, to make their job a lot easier, because they view it as it's good for the company, right? It's good for diversity. And they don't do diversity because they believe in it. They do diversity because, as I mentioned, it's a great filter. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like an RPG. Like people just become the stats rather than the individual of who they are. It's like, okay, well, the stat is like, and you go to the filter, like show me people of color, and you already have like from 250, you have like only 50 applicants. And now it's like, show me gender, and then you have like even a smaller group. Show me based on sexuality, and even smaller. And that's really why they do it, and they get to feel morally superior because they're thinking it's like, oh, this is social justice. We're doing a good thing for the minorities and their communities and blah, 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 blah. And obviously it's not fair, but I think like the main problem is that you have like 250 skilled people for one job. And then if you look at unskilled labor, like for example, I don't know, plumbing, like I have a plumber that was self-taught, right? He didn't go to a university or anything. So if you look at plumbing and your toilet, let's say, doesn't flush properly, so you pick up the phone and you're looking for plumbers, you're going to notice that not only are they very expensive, but they're very rarely available. Like for example, I had an issue recently and I had to call a plumber. Schedule me 5 days after I called him on the phone. It was very expensive. Why? Because there's not a lot of plumbers, right? Everyone goes to university to avoid doing the low-skilled labor. And while the low-skilled labor is definitely not very pleasant, right? You don't sit at an office with air conditioning. But at the same time, you don't work 12 hours a day. You earn more money in some cases. And you don't have to put up with the struggle. Like the plumber isn't being harassed. The plumber isn't being groped by his boss. Although, like, here's a funny joke. I was actually in a cab a couple of days ago, and the taxi driver was like, "Man, I really love being a taxi driver." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Because I don't have a boss. I get to do whatever I want. This is my car, so no one gets to tell me what to do." And I'm like, "Make a right over there." Like, oh, God. I'm such an asshole. Hollywood is running out of ideas because of all entertainment is supposed to be predictive programming instead of entertainment. Yeah, I think like PC culture definitely helps in making Hollywood boring, but it's not only that. It's when you hire people based on ideology, and like everyone needs to think the same way, you're hiring a specific type of individual, right? You're not hiring the rebel. You're not hiring the person that's creative. You're pretty much hiring based on nepotism, and you're hiring based on ideological conformity. You're hiring people that are not ashamed to lie, and you're hiring people that are used to doing what they're told. And this eliminates the creative people, which means that they're not going to be creative. So like what they can do is like maybe they can copy, they can imitate, but they definitely don't have the soul or passion to create things. And most people who go into Hollywood, they go into Hollywood for the fame and the money, and they don't go into Hollywood because they genuinely love the art. They love like making movies, and they want to create a great movie that people didn't think about. And the problem is like right now the mainstream culture is progressive culture, right? Like every company virtue signals about woke ideology. Every company, tries to raise their ESG score, which is environment, social, and government. And you're not allowed to criticize the main culture. And if you can't criticize the main culture, then it's boring, because the main culture already criticizes the, counterculture, I guess, through the late night comedians and whatnot. So if you're not going to be able to criticize the politicians and you can't criticize like the things that are happening. I mean, the most edgy criticism that you had was Joker the movie, and Joker the movie was like being viewed almost as instigating to terrorism by certain outlets. Like they were saying, "Oh my God, if you show Joker the movie, like people are going to end up doing mass shootings in cinemas and blah blah blah," and that never happened. That never happened. But like the journalist didn't issue retractions or anything. And it's just like a signal. It's like, hey, if you want to make an edgy movie, like watch yourself, because the press is going to open fire on your ass. The rebels are the people who started making the poop art. Yeah, they were the rebels, and they won. And they're now in power, right? So the rebels were like the people who were making heavy metal, who were doing like the edgy things. I mean, you have to understand, in a very, very Christian society, heavy metal was considered the music of the devil. So yeah, they were very rebel. Like they were literally going against the grain. I think I read Mentat's super chat. We were talking about it just now. I closed my eyes and fired the cannon. V. Also, when are you going to join D&D with Arch? I miss it a lot. Man, I really don't have time anymore. Like, ever since I'm trying to pay the mortgage of this house, which is very expensive, I gotta make 3 videos a day. And on top of that, I got wedding celebrations. And on top of that, I still have kittens now to deal with. And I have a fiance that apparently wants me to spend time once in a while with her. So I'm really busy. I can't play D&D with Arch. In fact, I can't even watch anime movies. The only thing that I do, which is remotely entertaining right now, is I play old RPG games. So I played Fallout 1 and 2. I played Atom, which is kind of interesting, but it's lacking in many areas. Although it's an indie game, so I'm willing to overlook that. Pathfinder, Kingmaker, but that's kind of like, it's an interesting game, but it's got such a boring story. So yeah, like that's how I fill my time. But anyway, right, so going back, last month the DHH filed a gender-based discrimination, inequality, and harassment lawsuit against Activision Blizzard, alleging the company had the frat boy culture. I really hate the idea of calling it a frat boy culture. Like, if you look at the frat boy culture, it's like, it's very progressive, very PC, very social justice-y. You know, like, and you're telling me like this was Blizzard? I mean, that's not what the frat boy culture would look like in 2021, but I guess like progressives are stuck in the past. Now let's talk about the excessive drinking, right? So the excessive drinking, I actually spoke with the Blizzard employee and he explained it to me. The way they present it, like, they make you think that people were coming drunk at work. But the way it goes, when you're a company that hires more than 100 people, it's very difficult to go and hang out at a bar. I mean, when you're a small company, you can definitely, you know, like you're 10, 20 people, you can go out at a bar, no problem. But when you're 100 people, you would have to rent the whole bar, and that is very difficult. So what they do is like they have the party at the office. So they will have like Halloween parties, Christmas parties, you know, like get-together parties at the office where there's drinks available and people socialize and whatnot, right? And this is why, like, the person I spoke with at Blizzard, who's a straight white cisgender man, said that he never touched alcohol because it's such a fucking bad idea. Like, you're at a company that has an HR that is progressive as fuck, that constantly virtue signals to their own clients on Twitter, and they're like obsessed with political correctness. Why on earth would you go and have a drink at that office? Like, I'm not saying don't go to the party, but do not drink for the love of God. I mean, again, it's like going in the Soviet Union and hanging around with the KGB and having a drink with them. What type of person would do something like that? You need to be absolutely insane. Just mentally deficient in order to think it's a good idea to go at this company that is obsessed with micromanaging anything, where jokes can be harassment, and you go there and you have a pint. No. Under no freaking circumstance. Like, the only way I would survive at this point in this Californian culture is by going to the job, do your work, only talk about work, and then fucking off. You don't talk with anyone about your personal life. You don't use Twitter. You don't use social media unless you're using it to promote your product. Like, literally, that's what I would do. I would have a Twitter where I would just suck the company cock and I would say, oh my God, we're pushing this game. It's very exciting. Guys, please check it out. I'm very glad to have worked on this game. Like, literally, just talk about the product and how fucking amazing it is. And if the product isn't amazing, then don't talk about it, right? So that the people don't think you're lying to them. But you're not going to talk negative things about it. Just promote it as positively as you can. And don't engage with the fans, right? Like, you just go on Twitter and you're saying, all right, StarCraft 2 is coming out. You guys are going to be mind blown. We're going to see the trailer. It's very amazing. We put a lot of heart and soul into it. I can hardly wait to see what you guys have to say when you finally get to play it. Right? Like, that's it. That's the only thing you talk about. And you have like your personal life with your friends that are outside of the company, and you get to joke with them, and you get to hang out with them, and you watch football, and you watch anime, and you do everything you want. And you have like your little house where you pull your drapes, and you make sure that it's dark before you watch my videos, so that no one knows what you're doing. And at work, you do not drink, you do not hang out. This is like, no, seriously, like, this is the advice that I give to men, right? I give advice to men. No, seriously, think about it. You're risking your career. Don't listen to the progressives that try to make it like going to work is not the same like going to the Soviet Union. It is literally the same. All right? The walls have ears. There are people that, like, if you listen to HR, all right? Like, if you actually go on channels where people from HR talk, the way they like to fuck with workers, it's like, okay, they don't like this guy. Or maybe they want to invite a friend to the company. What they do is like they will find a guy, and then they will start creating a file on him. So they will go through his social media. They will listen to company rumors. Like, if they manage to get enough rumors, then it sticks. And if you have enough rumors, then you're going to be invited to the dungeon or the basement where the HR is located. And then they're going to have a conversation with you. Like, why would you give them the ammunition? Right? Like, why would you be the guy that goes to the company party and drinks? And if you have women in the company, you should, by now, be able to stereotype very well between, like, the very progressive social justice-y individual and the 35 or 40-year-old woman that's married and isn't going to the company to cause problems. Like, you should be able to know the people you should avoid. And when you see the social justice-y person, you smile, you nod, you're very polite, and you only talk business. Like, if they ask you anything personal, you try to avoid or deflect. Who did you vote for? Oh, well, I'm not a really... like, who did you vote for? Oh, I got sick that day and I just didn't manage to go to vote. Or I don't think, like, this type of conversation is fitted for the office work. Have you played Ark Survival Evolved? There's not much of a story to it, but great fun building tribes and starting dino worlds. Yeah, I don't really like sandbox games. Sargon tried to get me into it. I didn't like it. 1010% on HR bit. Yeah. HR doesn't get the dungeon, they get the top suit next to the CEO. Well, the one that I spoke with was actually in the dungeon, but it depends on the company to company. But yeah, usually HR is like the real power in a corporation. Think about it this way. Stalin in the Soviet Union was the HR. I mean, if you have the power to hire and fire people in a company, and if you have the power to set corporate policy, you really are the de facto power there. Like, imagine this, okay? Like, if I were only to hire my friends at a company, and then the CEO takes an unpopular decision, well, I can just call it all the favors and be like, yeah, let's do a company walkout. Let me give you some dirt on this manager that you can leak to the press. Let's do a strike or whatever. Like, if you're the person that does the hirings, it's literally how Stalin got power in the Soviet Union. Like, When Lenin was in charge, Stalin was the HR lady. Like he was the person in charge of giving people jobs. And what he did is that he used his influence in order to give jobs to people that would then owe him a favor. And once Lenin died, that's how he got power. Yeah, you can literally say you didn't vote, or like like what I would say if a social justice lady came up to me, I would say, man, like I don't really have time for politics and following the television, because like I'm really inundated with the work that we do here, and I just want to focus 100% of my time on work. Like I'm really sorry, I don't do politics. I know it's important, but blah blah blah. Like that's literally how you need to have the conversation. Just don't give them anything. Don't allow them to, what they used to say, psychologically profile you. So Activision is one of the world's biggest gaming companies. One of its subsidiaries, Blizzard Entertainment, was founded. Brack, who did not respond to an email seeking comment for the story, stepped down. Let's see if they actually say anything more interesting in the article. Almost every single woman has at least one of these stories. So sexual harassment. Yeah, so if every single woman has at least one of these stories, why aren't the HR people being held responsible? Why aren't the diversity officers resigning as well? So if every single woman at a company had one of these stories, why is the HR not stepping down? Huh? Like they knew that this is a company where women get abused, and they kept hiring women for that company. They were like the pimps, huh? Like when I would go to the HR, like if I was working at the company when I thought no one was watching, I would put on the HR office like the pimp office. So the lawsuit contained multiple allegations of sexual harassment and misconduct. Yeah, like what I would do if at my company you'd have multiple allegations of sexual harassment and misconduct, I would put video cameras everywhere. Like literally every single office, except the bathroom, of course. And I would say from now on, there is no more talk or jokes or any sexual innuendos at the office. Zero tolerance policy. You make a joke, you make anything like that, boom, you're fired. There is another way, though. And this is from what I know from a guy who works at a Romanian factory, like a furniture factory. And the way they manage to not have to deal with this shit is that the people doing the hirings, like they don't have an HR department, which by the way, in California, you have to have one. If you have like more than a couple of workers, I think it's like more than 100 or so, you're forced by law to have an HR department, and you need to hire someone with a license, like someone who went to a university. You can't just, right? So that's how it goes into corporate culture. But the way you can avoid it, and this like factory owner, like he didn't have an HR department, but he did have like two of those ladies that lived under socialism, like 60 or 70-year-old ladies, like two of them. And they're the ones that do the accounting, and they're the ones that do the hiring. And they don't hire people that look like they're going to be trouble, right? So like people that come from certain universities, like they kind of know because they talk with other companies, and they kind of figure out like the type of people that did certain studies in order to become problematic for the company. They don't hire them. They don't hire very young women that look like they give this aura of entitlement, right? So they would hire like a shy girl with glasses that doesn't talk much, like they would hire her. But if hiring women, they really prefer like married women over the age of 30. And like they haven't had a single problem with this this way of doing business. Not a single lawsuit, not a single problem. And it's obviously the left would freak out if if it would go public what they're doing. But hey, it's like it's their cop. They're technically not discriminating. I mean, you're allowed to discriminate based on the university that a person went to. You're allowed to discriminate based on like the mannerisms and the appearance of a person at the interview. So yeah, I mean, I don't think like they would even have, but of course, like they would freak out in public. It's like, oh my god, like how can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And the people doing the hiring and the firings are girls, so. Yeah, it's like Tactical Droid saying, I will screw up at work, I'm a reactionary and I can't keep my mouth shut. Yeah, I completely get you. I know what you're saying. I probably like that as well. I don't think I saw the comment on my video, Forehead. I'm sorry. Show you my shirt. It's a Pikachu shirt. That's still bad, V. You should be an ally. Yeah, you should, but it's a lot better than being a Trump supporter, I tell you that. Like, if you were to be outspoken, and obviously right now Trump supporters are considered the bane of existence, but in the future, if DeSantis runs, like, you're not going to go to someone and say, yeah, I'm voting for DeSantis. Like, any right-wing candidate is going to be viewed as the devil at this point in these corporations, so. Personally, if I need an HR, I'd contract it. Don't want... Yeah, so this is what a lot of companies are doing, like they're contracting HR. Because what a lot of people notice is that HR, they have like this mindset of empire building. Like, again, like they're the real power in a company. And they have like a vision for the company, and they start like doing this little empire building where they're the ones like hiring people with specific personalities, and it's like, man, like they don't have the best interests of the company at heart. No, it's not a Sonichu shirt. I would buy one if I could, to be honest. Anyway, so they talk about the people who got fired. Observed by employees groping inebriated female employees at the company events and was known for making hiring decisions based on female applicants' looks. The company said Kilgore is no longer employed at Blizzard and declined further comments. Alright, a healthy drinking culture. Multiple Blizzard employees say that the company had excessive drinking. In describing the office atmosphere at Blizzard, many of the workers pointed out the prevalence of alcohol. Okay, so Blizzard is a company that was started by a couple of guys, right? Like 20 guys decided to, hey, you know what? Like, we got a good idea for a game. Like, we're gamers. What if we get together in a garage and we develop a game, right? So that's how the company started. And they managed to make a very successful game. Warcraft. Well, I think like Vikings might have been... No, I think Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans. Okay, Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans. So they managed to do that, and then they make more games, and they're very successful because they're very passionate and they're very talented. And what ends up happening is that the company grows, and then they realize it's like a problem. You can't only hire guys, okay? You need to hire women, because otherwise you're sexist, otherwise you're racist. There is nothing stopping a bunch of women getting into a garage and developing their own video game. Like, there is literally nothing preventing women from doing what Blizzard did, right? Like, this is not a company that got grants from the government. This is not a company that managed to use someone else's fame. No, it's literally a couple of guys that got together and they made video games. Now, these guys, obviously, in the beginning had an excessive drinking problem, right? Because, like, they didn't treat this as a serious shit, right? Like, they were gamers. And they were like, they're doing this to having fun. They didn't think that they're going to be billionaires, that they're going to be funding a company that's going to be one of the largest gaming companies in the world. No, like they went to work to have fun. But now you have like all these rules from the outside, and now it's like, oh my God, the prevalence of alcohol. It's like, well, why did you go to that company? You did not know? Like, you couldn't ask someone that worked there? It's like, yeah, these people have like a lot of alcohol and they drink a lot. Okay, that's not the company for me. I wouldn't like to go there, by the way. I don't like seeing drunk people. Right? I myself, like, sometimes drink, but I don't drink myself until I'm under the table and I don't have to tolerate myself, right? Because, like, I don't clone myself. If I clone myself, I wouldn't want to hang around me when I'm drunk. So if I heard about a company that likes drinking a lot, like, let's say a company where there's a lot of women that drink, I would probably not go there because I would be like, okay, first of all, lawsuit in the making. Secondly, I don't want to, you know, I got a fiance now. I got a specific age. It's not the time. It's not the place. I don't, like, okay, so groping people, yeah, bad. Harassing people, yeah, bad. But the idea that they like to drink at the company, that's something that I don't understand. What's the problem? A cube crawl is literally a pub crawl. Yeah, so the cube crawl was basically the idea that they didn't celebrate, like they didn't party outside of the company, they partied inside of the company. And it's like another thing, it's like, why go there? Like, I guess you should go there in order, because like companies require you to partake into these extracurricular activities. But why the fuck would you drink? The original intention was to display some of the work they had done with each other. According to a former employee familiar with the practices, alcohol was free flowing alongside food. The female longtime employee said that in the past, people would enjoy drinking games and drink to excess at the crawls, a practice that continued. And by the way, like here's another thing, right? Like if I was a woman, and I obviously would have like big plump tits, I would be very gorgeous, and I would also be intelligent. Okay, I would subvert the expectations. I wouldn't just be beautiful looking. I would be very smart. And I would be so smart that if I was at a party with only guys and I see people getting hammered, I would leave. I wouldn't stay there. And I'm telling you this as a guy, right? Like when I used to work at KFC, they also did the same thing, but they didn't like do it in the office. Like they would rent a place, they would rent like a bar or something, and we would be there. And there were like a couple of employees that they would get kind of aggressive when they were getting drunk. Do you know what I did? I would leave, because by the time they got drunk, I would already be there for like 2-3 hours. And when they started cursing and doing like all these aggressive moves, I would be like, okay, thank you, I need to get home. Oh, please, just why can't you stay a little bit more? Oh no, it's getting late, like my parents will worry and blah, blah, blah. And I would fucking leave. Why would you stay there? I don't get it. Honestly, is it something like Romanian culture that people act differently? Here's a thought for progressive. If my private company can do whatever it wants, why not defy the law and not have an HR department, since they apparently don't care that they ignore other laws? Companies don't do whatever they want, alright? Like, this is the most dumb shit that I ever heard. It's like using the opposite ideology to the one that you're at in order to make your point. And you're going to only see communists say that companies do whatever they want. There are so many regulations regarding sanitation, the way you even isolate the office building, the way you need to build the fire escape, and the way that you run the office. Like, everything is micromanaged. The idea that you can do whatever you want is absolutely not true. Okay, like the United States is not a libertarian nation, and I don't think like we maybe in Somalia a private company can do whatever it wants. Sounds like on classy drunks. Well, what do you expect? I mean, it was KFC, right? Like, we had all sorts of employees. We had employees that came from all walks of life. You had people at universities, you had people with schools, you had people that didn't even go to school. So it's really like it usually like depends from person to person, I think. And there's like this stigma. It's like, okay, so why are you saying like a person at the university would not behave the same like a person without schooling? And I think it's because of the reputation required, right? So, for example, as you can see, the people here who work at Blizzard, they have like their reputation taking a hit because of the healthy drinking culture, right? So, when you go to medicine, for example, you spend there 6 years learning the craft, and then you can only get a job by working at a hospital. And at any point in time, your medical license can be revoked. And if the medical license gets revoked, all the money and the time and the energy and the effort you spent to medical school becomes zero. So you need to be really, really careful how you conduct yourself in society. You're not allowed to get into fights. You're not allowed to get into anything controversial. You need to be very careful how you speak with the patients and so forth, right? So this is something that always looms over you. But if you're a plumber, I mean, there was like this neighbor of mine. He actually has a company with that deals with plumbing, and he told me like right now there's a shortage of workers that's really, really bad. And he tells me, it's like, all right, so I got a phone call from the manager, and he's like, I'm sorry to say this, but one of our employees just embarrassed us. It's like, what did he do? Did he come home? Did he come to work drunk? It's like, no, it's worse than that. Like, did he fall asleep? No, it's worse than that. Did he piss his pants? No, no, it's worse than that. Like, what did he do? He took a shit into the man's house. Like, in his pants? No, no, no. He took a shit on the man's house and he sprayed it everywhere. It's like he came drunk and there was like diarrhea everywhere on the carpets, on the table, on the television, like all the and right. So the plumber is lucky because right now it's the economical crisis. He's going to have his pay docked, but he can't fire him because he can't replace him. So what he did is like, yeah, he used the pay from the guy's salary in order to hire a cleaning company and fix the problem, right? But what I'm trying to say, imagine if a doctor did that, right? Like if a prestigious doctor from a hospital would shit in the hospital, and he would shit on the patient's bed, and he would be fired immediately, and everyone would know that this is the shitting doctor. Like, he would be on the mainstream news. You would be like, doctor in hospital, shits everywhere. So the standards are different for different professions. Like, some professions require higher standards. Imagine if a lawyer or a judge or anyone like that would have, come to work drunk. Okay, like, that's another thing. Imagine if you're a surgeon, and this happens a lot. That's why probably surgeons wore masks before it was fashionable due to COVID. I know a lot of surgeons that would go to work drunk. These are what we call hospital secrets. And they would operate flawlessly, right? And probably like the reason they're alcoholics, I assume, is because when they started doing the job, they were feeling a little bit faint. So they started drinking in order to be able to deal with it. Again, like, I'm talking about not young surgeons, like the young ones don't do it, but I know like old surgeons that have been operating for decades and they have like really good record at operating, but they're drunk. But if it was ever found out, like it was ever like made notice that they were operating while drunk, they would not have a job. Right? It's the same with judges. Imagine a judge going in drunk. With a plumber, different story. A bricklayer, a person that does construction or any type of labor, right? So like, this is why there's different standards in society when you're like how you behave. Like, the people who operate in some circles, it's more like an evolutionary mechanism, because if they don't behave properly, they immediately get fired. It's pretty much the same, I guess, with political correctness, right? Like, if you're a judge and you say something politically incorrect, immediately you're under the radar, and like the mainstream media will talk about you, and you're going to get a lot of articles written about you. But it's very unlikely that if a bricklayer says, or a trucker says something politically incorrect, that anyone will give a shit. Young surgeons do meth? No, in Romania, people rarely, especially in the hospital, they rarely do drugs. I never heard about it. You're doing your own plumbing. I guess not a lot of people do their own plumbing. They pay me to take poos on the job, yeah. When people don't work physically every day, they don't feel the toll it takes. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of toll of working physically, but it's not. There are certain professions though that are considered to be skilled labor, and you also have to work physically. I mean, working in the emergency ward or working at anything that has to do with the bones, or like the trauma department, or there's a couple of professions that actually, but especially like the emergency medicine, right? The ambulance and whatnot. You're going to do like a lot of physical strain. I mean, giving a person a giving a person a CPR, right? If you want to do it properly, like I'm telling you, it's very hard, right? Because you're pumping and you're pressing against that rib cage, and like after doing it for 1 minute, especially because you get like the adrenaline coming into you, because you realize you need to do it to save that person's life. So it's the adrenaline, is the fact that the way it's described to me by a medical professor. a CPR that doesn't break at least one rib is a CPR that was done improperly, right? So you need to apply like a lot of force in order to actually reach the heart, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to compress the heart, and the heart is behind the rib cage. And you're going to feel like incredibly tired after just one. Now imagine you have to give like 2 or 3 a day, and then you have to carry the stretcher, and then you have like various procedures, like for example, how to dislocate someone's shoulder or how to put someone's shoulders back. Dislocating, I think like I forgot the maneuver, what it was called, but you dislocate someone's shoulder when you want to put a needle and drag some of that, how do you translate fluid intra-articular? I guess like inter-articulary fluid. I don't know. But yeah, the way you do it is you literally you put the foot on the patient's armpit and you have to pull as hard as you can from its arm. Obviously, it's done under anesthesia, but still. Yeah, everything that has to do with bones is very physically intensive. Billionaires can get away with saying the N-word or any racial slur. Just as Trudeau. Yeah, there are. I don't think it's billionaires. I think it's more likely to do with people that are connected and people that are, I guess, in charge. I mean, look at Macron, right? Like Macron recently, he came out with such strong Islamophobic sentiments that if I were to say what Macron just said 4 years ago, I would have been banned for TOS violations on YouTube. But now it's fine. Now the overtone window just changed overnight. It's similar with Trudeau with blackface. I mean, he got away with it. There's so many other celebrities that got away with blackface. But it's obvious that if you did blackface, you wouldn't be able to get away with it. So I suppose it's kind of the same for, like if a doctor does blackface, then it's a lot worse than if a trucker does blackface, right? Because it's like, well, it's a trucker, like no one cares. But, oh, it's a doctor. Oh, that's serious. Yeah, the synovial fluid, yes. The problem is, like, I never studied medical English. And it's very annoying. Like, I should have. I guess, like, that would have been the next step that I would have focused on if I was practicing medicine up to this day. I would have focused on learning medical English. Anyway, right, thank you for the donations, thank you for the super chats, and more importantly, thank you guys for watching. And Dave won't publish his medical document to prove it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed the main video on the channel. And